Okay, so today we are going to be doing a video where I'm going to talk about some translated books that I have loved. This has been a video that's been requested quite a few times, surprisingly. So here I am. Let's do it. I'm going to be talking about some books that were written in other countries and other languages other than my own and translated that are fantastic that I'd like to recommend you. I have restricted myself. I have 10 books that I'm going to recommend you, and I've restricted myself to one book per author because otherwise this would be a Backman list. But I have several. I hope you'll enjoy this list. I hope you'll find some books to pick up. We're going to start with Backman. I'm sorry. All these books right here are Backman books. If this isn't your first video of mine, you know. He's my favorite author of all time. He lives in Stockholm, Sweden. All his books are translated into, I'm sure, many languages. English for me, and I adore his work. I guess I should also say in this video that this is both going to be a praise for the authors themselves as well as their translators, because the fact that these translators have done such a phenomenal job that they've been able to capture the authors' writing, their prose, their core messages, and their humor in a lot of cases. I mean, translators are gems of this earth. So this video, I want to make very clear, I appreciate translators so much. Back to Backman. Why do I love Backman? I'll keep it brief because I talk about him too much on this channel. Not that I'm gonna stop, but I'll keep it brief. Fredrik Backman, I adore his work. He has this untouchable ability of digging into the core of humanity, the core of who people are, and putting that on paper. Creating characters that are so honestly human, honestly flawed. And it seems like in every single one of his books, or most of his books that I've read, he has this core belief that he brings into his books that is, people generally are trying their best. So let's make some room for them. And I love that ideal. I love that in each of his books, he's helping us to relate to and understand someone who's in a little bit different situation than us. And he always has this ability to paint something, and a lot of times paint it in a very roundabout way where I'm just like, what are you even doing? What are we doing here? But by the end, it all comes together. And he has the ability to say things in such a simple yet unique way that packs the perfect punch to show me exactly what he's trying to discuss with me in his books. And I never don't cry. I never don't cry. Did I say that? I always cry in a Backman book because the things that he's talking to me about are so impactful and hit me so hard. Just kidding. I didn't keep it brief. Backman. My first book recommendation is an author. Just read all of his books. Just read all of them. Okay. Next book on my list is The Little Prince, which was originally written in French. I only recently read it. It's full of illustrations. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe Corey will do some nice things to show you. And it's a children's book, but it's one that, I mean, you've likely heard of it. It's one that both children and adults can really get a lot out of. A pilot who I believe his plane crashed. Now I don't remember the setup. Oh, I don't know. Stranded in the desert. Okay, a pilot is stranded in the desert. He comes across a prince, and the prince asks for such a simple thing, draw me a sheep, and it's so funny, like it's so silly and childlike and simple, but in this conversation that this pilot and this prince have throughout the book and the different places that they go, the whole discussion around it is what's truly important in life, what's truly meaningful in life. And it's such a simple yet very, very deep conversation that I really enjoyed having with the author, and that, I mean, I guess it's a very highly acclaimed book, so I won't spend so much time on it, but I think there's a reason it's been so impactful for so many people. A lot of times putting something so simply yet so differently just makes us see it a little bit more clearly. Next book on this list, another French classic, Beauty and the Beast. So Beauty and the Beast is a childhood, the Disney movie. It's something that I grew up loving so much. See a little bit differently now that I understand Stockholm Syndrome and abuse, but it's fine. I loved it as a kid so much. And this one, reading, when I first started getting into classics, I read a lot of original source material, stories I already knew, and it was so much fun to see how much darker these original stories usually are, and how different they were. And the discrepancies, the differences from this to the story that I knew was so interesting to me. I loved exploring this castle and seeing the different rooms, what they held. It's more than just a library. There are monkeys that put on plays. It's a strange book, but I loved it. I loved how odd this castle was, and the intricacies of the curse in this. It's a lot more detailed in the original than it is in, different things that we've seen, and the intricacies of it and all the different pieces of the curse and kind of leading up to why the beast was acting the way he was. It's so fascinating to me, and I don't know, I had such a great time reading it. I also think I just have really good memories of this because this was, I think, the first classic that I picked up and just sat down and read all the way through, and it was the first one that clicked for me, that I didn't feel like it was a hurdle anymore when I was first learning to love classics, and I was like, this was just lovely. I just enjoyed myself so much. Next book on this list is The Count of Monte Cristo, another French classic. I promise the whole list isn't French classics. The Count of Monte Cristo, another classic. You probably know about it. Oh my goodness, this is one of my all-time favorite books. So this is about a man who was betrayed, and we start off the book knowing more than him. And we spend time with him in prison, and we spend time with him understanding, learning the things that we already know from the beginning. And then there's this narrative shift that happens where now our main character knows more than we do, and we just have to be along for the ride and try to catch up. It's a story of revenge, but it's also a really reflective story where, again, the author is having conversations with the reader and really taking a critical look at of the mental state of our main character and the actions that he's making. It's thrilling, it's exciting, it's so much fun, but at the same time, there's a lot of deeper discussions of, is this all worth it? I don't want to say too much. I may have to cut some of that because I really, if you haven't experienced the story, I would really love for you to do it. But this is a book that I found to be so thrilling and engaging, but at the same time, so reflective. There were so many things that I pulled from this book that I chewed on for a really long time. I love this book so much. Now we're going to move over to some manga. I have two mangas that I'd like to tell you about today. I'm fairly new to manga, so they're both popular series, but we have One Piece, which is the absurd nonsense that is also surprisingly so funny and silly, but deep, and these characters I'm so attached to. We follow Luffy, who just wants to be a pirate. He gathers a crew, and now they are on their way to get a thing, and on the way, they encounter various obstacles, and it's not something I thought I would like. I went into it knowing very little, just knowing that a lot of people recommended it. And if someone had pitched it for me, I probably wouldn't have even tried it. But it works. The way this author handles absurdism, Luffy is the perfect main character to take me through this ridiculous, hilarious, fun, endearing ride. And then we also have Death Note, which is a little bit darker. Death Note is about this boy who stumbles on a book. There are these gods in this world that write names in books, and when they do that, these people die. Well, they write the name, they write the date, and they write the cause of death, and that's how people die. This god was bored, so he dropped his death note, wanted to see what a human would do with it. And do you know what this human does? Well, at first, he tries to be good. He tries to eliminate people in the world that are terrible. It changes him. I mean, what can I say? What would this do to people if they had this power, if they had this ability? Would they maybe not have a good arc? This story was so fantastic. Granted, I did not like the second half nearly as much as the first half, but I loved the first half so much that I excuse it, and I still think about it all the time because it was such a fascinating and well done story. All right, now let's move over to some nonfiction. I'm going to recommend The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, which is a nonfiction by Marie Kondo. Maybe you've heard of her. This is probably my, as far as like ratings go, which I'm not giving ratings in this video or really ever. I don't like rating things, but this is probably the lowest rated book on this list just because there's quite a few things that weren't applicable for me, that didn't work for me. But in general, this is a book about cleaning up. Keeping your life tidy, organization, and the joy that you get from having your home, everything have a place. I like my house to be clean, but I don't really care if it's messy. So this was a great book to read while cleaning my house because it needed it. There's a lot of philosophy that she ties into this book, and that's the parts that just like weren't really applicable to me. Stuff about like items having some level of sentience, like you know, your socks, if you fold over the elastic instead of just laying them flat, then it tires them out, and you know, a lot of philosophy about like respecting our objects because of how they feel or how they, I don't really know how to describe it, just how they deserve a break from the day as well. You know, taking your items out of your purse because your purse deserves a break from the work it's done for you that day. Stuff like that, that just, you know, it's her philosophy. It's how she views the world. I don't relate to that, but I still appreciated her tips on how to organize my home. I had a good time. Okay, next is a book that I grew up reading, and it's Inkheart. As you can see, it's incurred a little bit of damage over the years because I read it a lot growing up. This was originally written in German, translated, I'm sure in a lot of places, to English for me. I haven't read it in a lot of years, so forgive me, this description's gonna be poor. But as I remember it, her father is, I think he rebinds books, so books that are, you know, sad like mine, he gives them new life. He binds them, gives them a new cover, and I really love the setting of this because I grew up adoring books so much, and having this slow setup of just an appreciation of books, I loved it. I think that Maggie, our main character, I think her dad would be scandalized at what I do to books now, but I don't know. I loved it. But anyway, her dad, I think he's called a silver tongue. He has the ability, he reads a book and then brings that book to life. So Maggie, her dad reads this dashing tale of Capricorn. Capricorn escapes the boundaries of fiction. Okay, anyway, he reads this crazy tale, and then Maggie is now in it, and she is going to try to figure out how to harness the magic to be able to kind of set things right. And I don't know, being in a story is a really great adventure for a kid and an adult. I still remember this book so fondly. I mean, it was one of the books that I got lost in the most, maybe because my main character was actually lost in it too. And I loved it. Next we have The Little Mermaid, which is a Dutch classic, again in the same vein as Beauty and the Beast. I was just rereading classics. I was rereading stories that I had grown up already loving. And again, the classics are so much darker, but I kind of love that. I love seeing the original intent that this story was supposed to have before it got Disney-fied, which, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed growing up with these stories Disney-fied, but now as an adult, exploring them this way, where our little mermaid, every time she walks, it feels like she's getting stabbed. It feels like she's walking on knives and there's a bloody trail behind her. It's actually just, it's a short story, so I'm not gonna give you too much, but her journey and what she went through and how it all resolves or how it all ends is so fascinating to me, because it's terrible, but I loved it. And finally, I'm ending on a book that I only just finished last night, and if I'm planning out my videos correctly, the review for this book will be up the day before this. The Posthumous Memoirs of Cubas. I hope I said it correctly. This is a Brazilian classic, and I'm gonna go into it more in the review, so I'll have it linked. Check it out if you want to. This is the strangest, yet, I don't know. It's one of the weirdest books I've ever read, but I loved it so much. The humor in this is so dry and so insulting to himself, to the reader. He will regularly cut off a thought and decide that the thought was dumb and then just end the chapter because he's done talking about it. He breaks the fourth wall constantly and insults me regularly, and I love it. I love this dry, witty, pretentious, rude narrator that I followed through his memoirs. This is a book written after he's dead. After this main character, Cubas, died, he decided, all right, I'll write my story. And it's terrible. And his life was an interesting one. Sometimes I didn't like him, sometimes I loved him. And he wrote it in just such a brutally honest, what does it matter, I'm dead now, let's just tell it way. So this book explores such deep concepts while balancing it out with amazing humor. And I enjoyed this journey so much of reading this book. I honestly didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I wasn't even sure if I'd like it at all, but it gripped me. It captured me so quickly because of the humor and then the things that the author ended up discussing through this very blunt look into life and society at the time was also fantastic. I enjoyed this book so much. Check out my review if you want to really dig into it and read some quotes with me, and it was fantastic. There you go. Those are some translated books that I have loved reading. I will hopefully be able to make another one of these videos down the road because I want to continue to read a lot of translated books because some of these are favorites of mine. Anyway, I would love to hear what some of your favorite books that are translated into your native language are. If you live in a country other than mine and you'd like for me to read some of your favorite books of your country, of your native language, please leave recommendations down in the description because I would love to check them out. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you again soon. Bye.